Yesterday, we saw the direct examination of Mr. Kwong, who was the firearms expert for the state of Florida in the SUNY Bell trial. Today, we're going to look at some surgical cross examination. Here's what we're talking about today. It may not be obvious, but the criminal defense attorney, in order to be good at his job, has to understand a lot of different things. He has to understand his client. He has to understand how he lived. Has to understand how he goes about thinking about things. He also has to understand that in most cases, he's going to lie to the lawyer in order to make himself look better, and that there are going to be a lot of things that he just can't explain, which is one of the reasons why, for the most part, nobody ever puts one of these people on the stand. But above and beyond all of that, one of the things that he absolutely has to be good at has to understand firearms, and particularly if firearms are a part of the case that they're trying. If you got a drive-by shooting, you're going to have all kinds of ballistics. In this case, you've got a drive-up and drive-by shooting, and there are firearms all over the place, and there are different types of firearms, pistols and AK platform pistols, which are very similar to rifles. And there's a missing 5.56 that could be either a rifle or a pistol. There's a lot of stuff going on in this case that deals directly with firearms. So it isn't just being able to understand how a pistol or a rifle or a revolver works. It's understanding the different types of firearms, the different types of ammunition and ballistics, degrees of penetration in various types of projectiles, and having some experience with actually having fired a weapon at some point. Before we get to the cross examination, let's talk a little bit about that. I'll start with the AR-15 and AK-47 platforms. You probably have heard of both of those types of semi-automatic rifles. The difference between them is both the cartridge that's used, 5.56 millimeter in the AR and 7.62 millimeter in the AK, as well as the recycling and ejecting mechanisms and stocks and that sort of thing. The AK features a long stroke gas piston system and a robust steel stamped construction. It offers rugged reliability in harsh conditions. In contrast, the AR employs a direct impingement gas system and has a more modular design with aluminum and polymer parts and is generally lighter, more accurate, and easier to customize. Now, that probably doesn't make a whole lot of difference to the people who go out and buy these to use in committing crimes. To use these in committing crimes, you don't need to know any of that. Mostly what you need to know is which end the bullet comes out of and what part makes it go bang. But to successfully defend a criminal case, a lawyer needs to understand all of this because he's going to have to deal with witnesses and experts on these subjects. And for that reason, he has to know the basics of this at least as well as the experts in order to ask targeted and pointed questions of an expert once they've testified. In the SUNY Bell case, this knowledge is going to be indispensable. Why? Because the state has no definitive answer as to who fired the fatal shot. And the attempt to make up for this consists of a lot of expert testimony that at the end of the day, so far anyway, amounts to a grain of sand on the scales of justice. Let's talk a moment or two about some of the ammunition. This is a 5.56 millimeter round, the kind of round that is fired in an AR-15. Now up here at the top, you can see that the entirety of the projectile is encased in copper. It is a copper jacketed bullet. They call it a full metal jacket because it goes all the way around the projectile. Now, the impact of having it that way is that it is far more likely to penetrate metal and it is less likely to mushroom. However, once it hits something, it will lose the sort of the football issue is that, when you spin a football, that keeps it stable in flight. Well, the barrel has lands and grooves which cause the barrel to spin, or not the barrel, the bullet to spin as it goes out. And once it hits something hard or tangible, it will either deflect or it will tumble. Lots of different things happen with it. But the bottom line is you need to be able to understand that when you're dealing with something that involves a 5.56. When you're dealing with 9 millimeters, or for example, in this case, a pistol round, this is a 38 caliber pistol round. And it's got that flat part up at the top, right? But what that is actually a hollow point. And you see all the way around here, there are little cuts in the outer part or the casing of the metal jacket of the bullet. And what this bullet is designed to do is it's designed to expand. It essentially mushrooms, and it does that fairly quickly after it leaves the barrel and before it hits whatever it hits. And the reason it does that is because that's the way it's designed. It is designed to inflict a lot of trauma. But of course, when it hits like that, well, it will deliver the majority of its force to the first thing that it hits. And if it's going through a car, it's going to deliver the majority of its force to the metal that it hits. And then if it continues on in, it's going to still retain enough velocity to potentially kill somebody. And then this is a full metal jacketed 45 caliber round here. You can see it has no hollow point, and this will tend to go through metal much more quickly, and it can do at least as much damage as an AR-15 at closer range, although an AR-15 does have the ability to hit targets way out. When people are using these kinds of firearms in criminal cases, and particularly in this case, it was just to fire as many bullets as possible in the direction of the people they were shooting at, in the hopes that maybe one or two of them would hit somebody. And of course, several of them did hit people. I don't believe the state has revealed at this point which caliber of bullet actually caused Suni's death, but clearly at least one of them did. The examination to this point has been about the way the firearms operated. The cross-examination is about what does all this really mean? After offering a long series of opinions about the weapons, their use, their operation, and the way the cartridge casings were ejected from these weapons, the state tendered the witness over to the cross-examination of the defense lawyers. 3 lawyers did targeted, surgical, and very effective cross-examination. Let's watch.
Good morning, Mr. Kwong. How are you?
Good morning, sir.
Mr. Kwong, you were testifying on direct examination about muzzle flash. You recall that line of questioning?
Yes.
And I want to ask you again, just so I understand. Did you give a description of what a 9mm muzzle flash would look like at night? Because I was having a hard time understanding or a hard time hearing it.
All I said is that because the rifle ammunition's lot more powerful than a 9mm, which is a handgun. So I would expect to see the muzzle flash from a rifle would be bigger than the muzzle flash of a 9mm.
And so you were only suggesting to us and describing the difference between one and another, correct?
That's correct, yes.
And your description would be that a 5.56 or a rifle discharge or a muzzle flash would be brighter. Is there anything else that you would think would distinguish the two?
Well, it's brighter and also bigger.
Okay, bigger meaning longer, meaning wider, as you visualize it, as you see it.
Larger and also longer.
Would it take a certain form as you see it visually?
Well, yeah, you can see it visually at nighttime.
Okay? And what would it look like?
It's a white light.
So moving on to your testimony on State's Exhibit number 44, which is your charts. I'm going to show you one of the 9 casings that are displayed in this group 1 are located within the first third or so of the total 879 feet that exist from the start at North 45th Street to the end where the vehicle came to rest, correct? You would agree with me?
Yes,
And that would constitute, if simple math tells you, somewhere in the neighborhood of 300 feet, if it's approximately a third.
yeah, a third of it, yes.
And when you look at those casings, there's no way to determine whether those 9 casings, how far they could have been displaced, whether it be from the ejection process itself or from any contact with passing traffic, correct?
That's correct, yeah. And also if the car is moving, yeah, it also taking that into factor.
Okay, so the movement of the vehicle, the ejection process itself from a semi-automatic weapon, as well as any traffic that it may come in contact with, correct?
Correct. If there are other cars on the road, they could have pushed the casing further.
Nothing further, thank you.
So, as you probably understand from that cross-examination, the placement of those shell casings is utterly meaningless. You can't tell them from one another. You don't know whether they were affected by other factors. It's not a controlled crime scene. All kinds of things happened in between the time those bullets were shot and the time the crime scene was processed. Lots of times people think that cross-examination is an attorney getting up in the expert's face and telling him how to cow eat the cabbage. But that's a terrible way to cross-examine people. What you want is to get their agreement if at all possible. And of course, the guy not only agreed with him, he went further and said, hey, in addition to that, think about this. That's a good expert for one thing, because he's trying hard to be honest. And 2, it was an excellent cross-examination because he went directly to the heart of the issue that affected his client, and he got that information in before the jury. Now let's look at the next one.
Good morning, Mr. Kwan. Nice to see you again.
Good
So
morning,
I want
sir.
to talk to you about the fact that there's 2 Taurus 9mm firearms that you had the opportunity to analyze in this case, correct?
Yes,
All right. So the first one is as described in States 29, where you had the pictures. Okay, remember looking at the pictures earlier?
yes, on the photographs, yes.
Okay, and that's the one where you connected it to 8 casings and 1 projectile, right?
That's correct, yes.
And that was a projectile that was found within the vehicle.
That's correct.
All right, and then States 31A and B is actually what we have with us here,
Yes.
right?
Yeah, the gun in the box.
Okay, so it's 2 different firearms that we're discussing, but they're both Tauruses.
Yes, they are from the same manufacturer, Taurus, as well as same caliber, as well as same model.
And these are the casings that we're talking about at evidence marker 43 and 44 towards the west side of the crime scene, correct?
Yes,
So when you test fired, remember when you were showing us your test fires earlier from State's Exhibit number 32?
yes,
You used hollow points and you talked about fragments that happen as the essentially the projectile is expelled, correct?
Yes.
Would you agree with me that those fragments are not unique to that particular firearm?
Well, it depends. What do you mean by that?
When you have other hollow point bullets from other guns that you fire, okay, they are going to fragment in that same manner as the test fires from State's Exhibit 32. It's not unique that only this firearm is going to cause a hollow point bullet to fragment.
Yes.
So you agree with me?
Yes, I agree with you, yes.
Okay. And earlier when you were discussing the capacity of the firearm, okay, State's Exhibit 31A and B, talked about the difference between when something is fully loaded versus just having magazine capacity. Could you explain that to us, please?
Well, the full capacity is fully loaded magazine plus one in the chamber. So when it is fully loaded, that means whatever the capacity of the magazine plus the one in the chamber.
So what an individual would have to do is they would have to insert the magazine into the firearm. They would have to rack the slide, causing a bullet to go into the firearm. Then they would have to eject the magazine, put another bullet in, and then insert the magazine again for it to be fully loaded, correct?
That's correct. You described it better than I could.
I don't know about that, sir. But what I would ask you, though, based on your expert opinion and based on your training and experience in this area, should this jury take anything away based on the evidence that you've had to review about whether or not the magazine, whether or not the firearm in State's Exhibit 31 was fully loaded or anything like that?
I don't know.
Can you say anything about who is in possession of 31 as far as their actions on that night, whether they had the gun fully loaded, whether they had to chamber a bullet or anything like that?
I do not know that.
Okay, thank you, sir.
You can tell from listening to these attorneys that they understand how these firearms work and they understand the chaotic nature of what went on that night, as well as the inability of the state to prove who held what, who fired what, who did what, any of that. As a result, that makes it much easier on them to create reasonable doubt. Let's just take one of them. Was James in the car? Yes. Can you prove he held a gun? No. Can you prove he used a gun? No. Can you prove that his gun was one of the guns used? Well, he had certainly pawned that weapon later on, but we don't know if he used it or someone else used it. We just know that he pawned it later. This is the problem that the state faces in a situation like this, and it's also a problem when all of the defendants take the approach of our founding fathers. Our founding fathers said, we must all hang together or we will surely hang separately, and that's exactly the situation these guys are in. They must clearly hang together or they'll hang separately. Or in Florida, I guess they get the Kevorkian cocktail. But either way, none of them want to have that happen. So again, this is a good surgical cross-examination because it goes right to the heart of the issue that affects his client, takes it out of the ball game, and essentially negates the first 2 hours of this direct examination.
Good morning, Mr. Plum.
Good morning, sir.
You've identified shell casings in group number 6 as belonging to a 5.56 or a 2.23. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Were you able to identify those shell casings to a particular brand of weapon?
No, I cannot.
And were you able to do the same with the 9mm? Were you able to identify the shell casings on the 9mm to a particular brand of weapon?
No, unless I have the gun.
Okay. You have to have the actual firearm that discharged the casings in order to make a positive identification. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Okay. And obviously, Mr. Wong, you have no idea who discharged the firearms that produced the casings, correct?
That's correct. That's
thank you.
beyond my expertise.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Game, set, and match right there. Now, this is a horrible case. Anytime a child is killed, particularly as a result of what appears to be gang violence, there is no, there's absolutely no reason not to prosecute if you have viable suspects. But you have to have the evidence to prosecute. And from what I've seen so far, they have a lot of evidence, but they don't have anything that draws a direct line from anyone to having pulled the trigger on the firearm and what the firearm was that actually killed Sunny Bell. And that creates reasonable doubt as to every one of the people involved in this. And I think I think the state did a good and laudable thing by bringing the prosecution. In other words, at least attempting to hold these people accountable if and the evidence certainly suggests that they were involved, but whether or not they were responsible is an entirely different matter. And so it may be that the state just hopes on that they, by dumping a bunch of evidence on these defendants, the jury will go, well, they obviously must be guilty of something. But I suspect that these defense attorneys, who are actually very good at their job, will do a very credible job on closing of tying up the fact that the state, well, it's one of those emperor has no clothes situations. This emperor has no clothes. Thanks for watching. I appreciate you being here today. If you have the opportunity today, try to do one kind thing to help somebody else. Any kind thing will do. Buy somebody a Coke, get them a cup of coffee, anything that makes their day better. That would be a way to help make the world a better place. Because after all, isn't that what we're all after? Now, YouTube has a few things that they think you might be interested in, and they're going to be showing you that right up there.